7 missiles. That's what landed inside Netanya last night. Not in empty fields on the outskirts, not in some remote industrial zone, inside the city. 7 confirmed impact sites in one of the most defended urban areas on the planet. And the Israeli government still hasn't told the public what was actually hit. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't just another night of sirens and interceptions. What happened over Netanya in the early hours of this morning represents something far more significant than a failed missile barrage. It represents a turning point, a moment where Iran didn't just launch missiles, it launched a message that says, "We know exactly where your ceiling is, and last night, we broke through it." I've been covering this conflict since it escalated on February 28th, and I want to walk you through everything that happened last night, what it actually means strategically, and why the numbers behind this attack should be making headlines on every major news outlet in the world right now. Because they're not. And that absence tells you something on its own. Stay with me all the way through this one, because by the time we get to the production numbers, I promise you, the way you see this entire war is going to shift. Let's start with Netanya itself, because the choice of this city is not random. It never is with Iran. Netanya sits about 30 kilometers north of Tel Aviv, right along Israel's Mediterranean coast. Population hovering around 221,000 people. On the surface, it looks like a coastal city, beaches, hotels, residential neighborhoods. But underneath that surface, Netanya is one of the most economically critical nodes in all of Israel. The city hosts Israel's Diamond Exchange, an industry responsible for billions of dollars in annual trade. Major power transmission lines run through the area. Telecommunications infrastructure, transport corridors connecting northern and central Israel. All of it passes through or near Netanya. When you strike Netanya, you're not just terrorizing a civilian population. You are reaching into Israel's coastal economic spine and pulling on the wires that hold the whole system together. Iran understood this. The IRGC didn't pick Netanya off a map. They picked it because of what it represents structurally. Meanwhile, please leave your questions or comments in the comments section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. Now, let's continue. At 11:47 p.m. local time, air raid sirens ripped through the city. Families jolted awake, grabbed their children, and ran for shelters. People who stepped outside or looked through their windows described something that genuinely sounds terrifying. Dozens of glowing streaks cutting across the night sky, descending from multiple directions at once. Not 1 or 2 missiles from a single trajectory. A web of incoming threats spreading across the darkness from different angles simultaneously. Iron Dome activated. Aero systems came online. White contrails lit up the sky as interceptors screamed upward to meet the incoming barrage. Some of those missiles detonated in midair, bright flashes against the dark, the visible proof that the defense systems were doing their job. But some missiles didn't explode in the air. Some kept descending. 7 of them reached the ground. Now here's where I need you to stop thinking about this as a story about missiles and start thinking about it as a story about math. Because that's what this actually is. The concept you need to understand to make sense of everything happening in this war right now is called a saturation attack. And it has nothing to do with cutting-edge technology or secret weapons. It is pure, brutal arithmetic. If a defense system can physically engage 6 incoming targets at the same moment, you fire 7. If it can handle 20, you fire 25. You keep escalating the volume until the defender either runs out of interceptors or runs out of time to deploy them. The objective isn't precision. The objective isn't destroying any specific target. The objective is overflow, overwhelming the system's capacity until something gets through by mathematical necessity alone. Israel's air defense architecture is genuinely impressive. It operates in layers. Iron Dome at the base, designed to intercept short-range rockets fired from Gaza and Lebanon. David's Sling in the middle tier, handling medium-range ballistic threats. Then Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 at the top, built specifically to intercept long-range ballistic missiles, the kind that Iran launches from its own territory thousands of kilometers away. Each layer has a maximum engagement capacity. Each interceptor in these systems costs somewhere between $1 and $3 million per unit. What happened over Netanya last night was that Iran fired more missiles simultaneously than all available batteries in the area could physically engage at the same time. Not because the technology failed, not because an operator made an error, not because of any breakdown in coordination or readiness, because the system ran out of engagement lanes before it ran out of incoming targets. That is the ceiling, and Iran didn't stumble onto it. They found it deliberately, and now they've proven to the entire watching world exactly where it sits. Here's the number I want you to hold in your mind for the rest of this video. Iran produces approximately 100 ballistic missiles every single month. The United States, which manufactures many of the interceptors that Israel depends on, produces approximately 6 to 7 interceptors per month. 100 missiles being manufactured versus 6 interceptors being manufactured every month. Read that ratio again and let it land. During the 12-day war last June, the United States burned through a full quarter of its entire THAAD interceptor stockpile in less than 2 weeks. A quarter of the National Reserve gone in 12 days. We are now on day 28 of the current conflict as of today, Sunday, March 29, 2026. The rate of interceptor expenditure has not slowed down. It has accelerated. And when you factor in the cost differential, the picture becomes even more alarming. Each Iranian ballistic missile costs Iran somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000 to produce. Each Arrow interceptor costs between $1 and $3 million, which means every single engagement, every moment one of these systems fires, costs Israel somewhere between 5 and 10 times more than it cost Iran to generate that incoming threat in the first place. Iran spends $500,000 to put a missile in the air. Israel spends up to $3 million to knock it down. And then Iran just builds another one for $500,000. In less than 28 days of active conflict, interceptor spending alone has surpassed $3 billion. We're talking about more than $100 million per day. And that's just to maintain the shield, not to take out launch sites, not to destroy production facilities, not to win ground, just to keep intercepting what's already in the air. This is where the strategic picture crystallizes into something genuinely frightening. Iran is not trying to destroy Israel with missiles. They don't need to. What Iran is executing is economic warfare dressed up as a military campaign. The goal isn't to flatten Tel Aviv. The goal is to make defense financially unsustainable, to force Israel and the United States into a position where they are hemorrhaging billions of dollars every month just to stay even, just to not lose, while Iran refills its stockpile continuously at a fraction of the cost. And the math is working. Since this conflict began on February 28th, Iran has launched over 600 ballistic and cruise missiles, along with more than 2,000 drones, in just 28 days. The missile types have also been diversifying in ways that compound the defensive problem. Solid fuel systems with precision terminal guidance. Heavy ballistic missiles reportedly capable of carrying cluster warheads. Platforms that Iran claims are maneuvering at speeds approaching Mach 8 during their descent phase. Each new type of threat demands a different radar configuration, a different tracking protocol, a different interceptor response. The complexity doesn't just add to the saturation problem, it multiplies it. Because now the defensive system has to identify, categorize, and respond to multiple different threat profiles simultaneously, all while the clock is running. Let's come back to Netanyah's geography for a moment, because it matters. The city sits on flat coastal terrain. No mountain ranges to interrupt ballistic trajectories. No natural geographic features that complicate the approach vectors. The defensive battery positions surrounding the city have been studied by Iranian intelligence for years, through satellite imagery, signals intelligence collection, and years of careful observation. The IRGC did not estimate the intercept capacity over Netanya last night. They calculated it, and then they deliberately fired past it. Watch the footage that came out of the city last night if you haven't already. You can see Iron Dome interceptors launching in rapid succession, white smoke trails climbing fast against the dark sky. You can actually count the mid-air detonations where interceptor meets warhead, bright flashes confirming successful kills. But if you watch carefully, you can also see the missiles that kept descending, still moving toward the ground, while the defensive batteries were fully committed to other targets with nothing left in the queue to reach them. The visual evidence of overflow is right there in the footage. This is not an interpretation. You can watch it happen. The regional implications of what unfolded over Netanya last night are already being absorbed in capital cities across the Gulf. and those calculations matter enormously. Every nation in the region that hosts American military installations, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, watched Iran penetrate one of the most sophisticated layered air defense networks ever assembled and confirmed 7 ground impacts inside a major Israeli city. And now every one of those governments is running the same arithmetic for their own critical infrastructure, their oil refineries, their export terminals, their processing facilities along the Gulf Coast. The difference is that their air defense systems are considerably less advanced and less layered than Israel's. The systems watching over Riyadh and Abu Dhabi are not Arrow 3. They are not David's sling. If Iran can punch through what Israel has, the Gulf states already know what that means for them. This is not a theoretical concern. Iran has physically struck Saudi oil infrastructure before. The 2019 Abqaiq attack knocked out roughly 5% of global oil supply overnight. The global oil supply chain is concentrated through a small number of choke points that sit within Iran's demonstrated strike range. A sustained campaign targeting Gulf energy infrastructure wouldn't just devastate the region economically. It would drive oil prices to levels the global economy hasn't seen in decades, triggering inflationary shocks across every major economy on Earth. The only thing standing between that scenario and the present moment is Iran's decision not to execute it yet. After what happened over Netanya last night, every Gulf capital is reevaluating how stable that decision actually is. Israel now faces 3 distinct strategic options. None of them solve the fundamental problem. Option 1. Dramatically accelerate interceptor production. Build more Arrow systems, source more components, manufacture faster. The cost of this runs into tens of billions of dollars. The timeline to meaningful impact is measured in years, not months. This conflict is not waiting for a production ramp-up. Option 2. Offensive strikes designed to destroy Iranian missile manufacturing capacity before the missiles are ever launched. Israel has been attempting this for 28 days. Iranian launch systems are mobile. Production facilities are dispersed and deeply hardened. The results of 28 days of offensive pressure have been real but limited. Iran's launch rate hasn't dropped. Option 3. Accept that some missiles will reach the ground. Redirect resources from interception towards civil defense, infrastructure hardening, and civilian evacuation planning. Manage the damage rather than prevent it. This is the option no government wants to publicly acknowledge, because acknowledging it means admitting the shield is not complete. Every one of these paths is a form of managed loss. Not one of them closes the production gap. Not one of them reverses the cost asymmetry that is bleeding Israel and the United States simultaneously. Iran produces 100 missiles per month. The stockpile rebuilds faster than it can be drained. The financial pressure intensifies with every week that passes. And there's a dimension to this that no interceptor can address, the psychological one. When the population of a major city watches dozens of missiles fill the night sky, when they hear sirens and run to shelters, and then watch government officials refuse to say what was actually hit the next morning, the public's confidence in its government's ability to protect them erodes. That erosion doesn't go away when the all-clear sounds. It compounds with every subsequent attack. The strike on Netanya last night was the 32nd wave of Operation True Promise 4 in 28 days. More than one major attack per day, every day, for a month straight. The frequency isn't a sign of desperation on Iran's part. It is a deliberate, calculated strategy of exhaustion. Drain the interceptor inventory. Drain the defense budget. Drain the public's psychological sense of security. Force the Israeli government into a position where it has to choose between financial collapse on one side and an unprotected civilian population on the other. It is a strategy that doesn't require Iran to win any battle. It just requires Iran to not lose while the costs on the other side accumulate. Israeli authorities confirmed emergency responses at 7 separate impact locations inside Netanya's metropolitan area. That confirmation has now been public for hours. What hasn't been released, not a word, is what those 7 locations actually were. No damage assessment. No description of what was struck. Residential buildings? Power distribution infrastructure? Transport hubs? The government isn't saying anything beyond a confirmed number of sites. That silence is its own kind of answer. Governments move fast when the news is good. When a missile lands in an open field, when the damage is minimal, when the story is our systems worked and nobody got hurt. That information gets released immediately because it reassures the public and validates the defense investment. Good news travels fast in a war. Bad news gets managed, delayed, classified, buried behind press conferences about other subjects. 7 confirmed impact sites. 0 details. You don't need a classified briefing to read that correctly. Last night was not the single deadliest strike of this war. It wasn't the largest missile wave by raw volume, but it was almost certainly the most strategically significant attack since this conflict began, because it was proof. Documented, visible, undeniable proof that Israel's layered air defense network, for all its technological sophistication, for all the billions of dollars poured into it over decades, has a hard and calculable upper limit. Proof that Iran has located that limit with precision. Proof that Iran now knows how to breach it on demand. And proof that a war fought primarily through interception and defense, no matter how advanced the technology behind it, cannot be sustained indefinitely when the attacking side is producing threats at 5 times the rate the defending side can produce responses. 7 missiles reached the ground in Netanya. 7 confirmed impact sites inside a city blanketed by the most expensive, most layered air defense system ever constructed. A network built to be impenetrable, straining to keep pace with an attacker who can generate each incoming threat for a fraction of what it costs to stop it. This is the operational truth that both governments are doing everything they can to bury behind classified briefings and carefully managed press statements. The arithmetic of this war, as it stands today on March 29, 2026, favors the attacker. And until something changes structurally, on the production line, on the financing side, or on the ground inside Iran, the saturation attacks are going to keep coming. Netanya was the proof of concept. The strategy has now been confirmed to work. The question that every analyst, every defense planner, and every government in the region is sitting with tonight is a simple one. Which city comes next? If this video gave you something that the mainstream coverage is leaving out, share it with one person who's trying to make sense of what's actually happening in this war. Hit subscribe if you want to stay ahead of this conflict as it continues to develop. I'm covering every major development as it breaks. And drop a comment below. Write Iron Dome if you believe Israel's defense network ultimately holds the line, or write Overflow if you think Iran's saturation strategy is already achieving what it set out to do. I read every single one. Let's see exactly where this audience stands.